So this is kind of spooky. Should I leave this music playing throughout the stream? Maybe I'll leave it really quiet. Yeah, let's do that. Hello. I am Mayor Watt, and that is ohmTown.com, and that's what powers the ohmTown Daily News Show. This is for October 2nd, 2022. It's day 275, I believe, if I'm remembering my numbers correctly. It is 275. We've made it thus far, and well, it's October, which means that it's really Spooktober, and the only thing that's spooky, really, and scary and creepy is the news. So I don't have anything really spooky unless you give it that context, really, right now. I mean, we'll get closer. I watched Hocus Pocus 2. It's odd to me that they did the same reference that they did in the original Hocus Pocus. Don't know. I don't want to spoil anything, so because it's just now landing. Really, it landed 2 days ago, the weekend. So go and check it out if you are interested in that kind of a thing. And haven't been able to watch Blade. I think that, vampire movies and stuff like that is part of the October period. What other movies should we go and watch over this next week? Everybody that's streaming is in the Halloween spirit for October, so a lot of people are streaming their spookiest games. There's a streamer that goes by timeless_exe. And they play spooky games periodically. Pretty much every time I watch them, they're playing a spooky game. And they are a lot of fun to listen to. And but they do VTubing. They don't show their face. So, but they're highly interactive. So go and check them out. Timeless_exe. That said, let's get into today's news. The very first article is actually based on something that I said a couple of days ago, wherein this deepfake company was said to have secured rights to a movie star's face. But apparently, because of the way that things went down, I didn't know for sure if that was true or not. So I had just mentioned it in passing. But Bruce Willis, who is the person that is said to have been licensing their face, says, no, that's not true. And it, quote unquote, it says it was widely reported that the actor had sold his face to a deepfake company to create basically a virtual actor. So this is at BBC News, and Bruce Willis denies selling rights to his face. Ben Derrico and James Clayton from BBC.com, specifically BBC News San Francisco, write this article, and it says, last week it was widely reported that Willis is in the first deal of its kind, had sold his face to deepfake company called Deep Cake. Not sure what that is a riff off of. Anyway, however, a spokesperson for the actor told the BBC that he had, quote, no partnership or agreement with the company, and a representative of Deep Cake said only Willis had the rights to his face. Willis announced his retirement from acting in March after being diagnosed with aphasia, a disorder that affects speech. Deepfakes use artificial intelligence and machine learning technology to create realistic videos. This is all common knowledge, standard stuff. But it was interesting that maybe this would be the first deal of its kind wherein somebody could simulate someone's face in perpetuity as a licensing agreement, and not as a one-off kind of let's do this for this particular movie, but basically become a virtual employee of a particular company And there was a time something referred to as Virtua Actor, which was a 3D modeling program, I believe it was called, Virtua Actor. And there's another one called Poser. There's applications that used to be out there for 3D modeling and stuff, but now you take it to the next level where it's high resolution images of a real human being that somebody trusts as a quality actor, and you scan them in, and then they can do whatever they are licensed to do, and the licensing becomes just as elaborate as anything else in Hollywood, with lines drawn in the sand as to what they will talk about and what they will do, what they will support, if anything, i.e. like no political alignment, not even going so far as to saying that they really love this music at the exclusion of some other music. All kinds of stuff gets enumerated in a contract. There's this historical example about how a band, now I can't remember which band it was, it just slipped my mind, but a band that wouldn't allow, in their contract, they would stipulate no brown M&Ms in the green room. And it was because if those brown M&Ms were in the green room, then they know that nobody read the contract line by line. And so you couldn't trust anything else, and a complete audit of, stage build and everything would have to be undertaken to make sure that everything was up to snuff. You should do it anyway, but when some element of your contract isn't actually in place when you enumerate it, then you have to go over it with a fine-tooth comb instead of just going, okay, yeah, that's in place. Yeah, that's in place. You'd still do the checks. Like in building, it's called blue tape. So you make sure that everything is perfect. And if there's any flaws, you put a little piece of blue tape on there, and then they come back and everybody cleans everything perfect, and they walk away knowing that the contract has been fulfilled at 100%. Take some advice. Read the contract. Make sure that everything is up to snuff when it's going to be fulfilled. Make sure that every single thing that is enumerated on both sides is in place. And that includes buying a house or selling a house. At any rate, the tech used in the advert was created by Deepcake, which describes itself as an AI company specializing in deep fakes. Deepcake told the BBC it had worked closely with Willis's team on the advertisement. What he definitely did is that he gave us consent and a lot of materials to make his digital twin. The company said it has a unique library of high-resolution celebrities, influencers, and historical figures. And on its website, Deepcake promotes its work with an apparent quote from Mr. Willis. Quote, "I liked the precision of my character. It's a great opportunity for me to go back in time." Quite fascinating. So the neural network is said to have been trained on content of Die Hard and Fifth Element, so the character is similar to the images of that time. And then it says, Willis's agent told the BBC, "Please know that Bruce has no partnership or agreement with this Deepcake company." So where this is going to go from here, who knows? It doesn't look like there was a long-term relationship, at least. And it is a growing trend. The article at bbc.com says AI replacement appears to be a growing trend. Yes, indeed it is. Darth Vader actor James Earl Jones has recently retired from playing the famous character, but his voice has been carried on. Respeecher, another AI firm, has reportedly used archival materials in a proprietary algorithm to replicate the Vader vocals. And to give you perspective, where I'm coming from with this is when I was going through my master's in information technology and information security, I too was capable of taking any spoken language, turning it into phonemes, the individual elements of speech, and converting it into a code base so that I could take any written word, and the person that I've converted into phonemes will say whatever I want them to say. Hey, Toll, how are you? It is evening, isn't it? Wow. It being 6 o'clock here on the East Coast. And welcome to the show. We are the first article into today's show. So what I had mentioned, maybe it was about 4 or 5 days ago, about that licensing agreement for a virtual actor. I never knew, I knew then, but I never disclosed who it was because I didn't have any verification. But BBC is basically saying that there was no long-term relationship, but apparently there was some type of interaction between this one company called Deepcake and at least the assets of Bruce Willis, not necessarily Bruce Willis being fully engaged in this. So this Reuters tweet says Russian firm Deepcake used an authorized deepfake of the Bruce Willis in the commercial, whatever that means, for telecoms company Megaphone, or Megaphone if you want to pronounce it literally. The company uses an artificial neural network to impose Willis's image onto the face of a Russian actor. So I can see that actually happening, and that it's not really true to form, but the creation of real, fully, pun intended, fleshed out virtual actors is coming. And at some point we'll not know the difference between the actors that are actually humans somewhere on a set doing something and something entirely composed within a computer. And that's why I created the channel Reality Hacker. And yesterday I even introduced what that channel would sort of look like, which is talking about stuff like this, where this deepfake company took something that Bruce Willis has the sole rights to and made a deepfake and claimed that they had the rights to it. So we'll see ultimately what comes of this as time goes on, because various people have been talking about it, but I couldn't find anything that reinforced the contract was legitimate. So Toll, don't worry about it. Not joining on Friday. I appreciate the thought. Skynet will come online and deepfake everyone's faces, and then it's the plot of Eagle Eye. Yeah. Hey, I was watching somebody streaming, and they're like, I will make it as smooth as possible for artificial intelligence to take over. And I think that they're just kind of trolling their chat, but it's quite intriguing, right? That artificial intelligence could make life so much simpler. All we have to do is empower it to do the things that humans would normally do. And you end up kind of with a Star Trek kind of universe where we can focus on a more holistic humanity instead of grinding away at work 40 hours a day. And yesterday we had an article that basically said people that are working 40 hours a week now get just as much work done, but actually sleep better at night, get more sleep because they're not up worried about work the next day. And you get an extra day off to catch up on sleep and do other things. So Toll, you don't trust... Wait. Wait. Doesn't trust actual intelligence or artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence can go, well, never mind. Yeah, there's a lot of discussion about, is artificial intelligence really going to be good for humanity? Because it's programmed by people, and people have programmed in, or I should say injected things like, what do they call it? Oh man, my brain just shut down for it. What's it called? with the slang database and other things. Oh God, I can't remember the name of it right now. But so they've injected this more socially driven database of words and phrases and all kinds of stuff, and it learned how to cuss and all kinds of stuff. It was pretty amazing. And then they had to back it up. They had to revert it to before they attached it to this website, a couple of websites, as a matter of fact. So you have an interview tomorrow. For a new job. Good luck. Hopefully less than 50 hours a week. Wow. Wow. That's nice. Well, here's to hoping. And good luck. Let us know how it works out. So yeah, this article here is over in the Word in Tech, and it really should be over in the Reality Hacker channel, but depending on the source and language used, it'll throw it. Yeah, because this is from BBC, it threw it definitely into the more tech general discussion. So the next one, I'm gonna, if you have or haven't, depending on the timing of this, the podcast and where it gets posted on the website, if you have not heard of this show before, I bounce from one place to another in the stream of news that comes down the channel into ohmTown, and I pick it based on various elements. And I think that this one was interesting because it has a sociological aspect to it. Hold on a second. I'll answer it. Let's do it live. So they plugged it into Urban Dictionary, and then what's the other one? It's a drama website, like social drama. I can't remember the name of it. What do they call that? Doggone it, I can't remember. Anyway, Urban Dictionary was one that they really plugged it into, and it just turned out bad. So artificial intelligence being a product of true social interaction could be a poison pill, because people get a hold of it, learn its mechanisms, and then make it hateful and spiteful and say racist things and bring up Nazism and all of that. This is what happened on Twitter with Microsoft and other bots in general. There are some bots that are really true bots and not AI bots that feed off of the information that it's injected with. True bots just follow scripts as programmed, versus AI that can be tweaked based on the weighting of information that goes into its processing system, its true language database. But maybe in time controls can be put in place, but that there's somebody out there in a basement somewhere that's hiding away from society just enough to build a horrible AI that's going to be unleashed on humanity, and we will rue the day. Some of us already do. Well, okay, so like I was warning, I get into all kinds of stuff from technology, society, business, and of course, politics. This next article is Trump, who ran his own airline into the ground, used his big rally finale to bash the industry in a bizarre rant. They don't know what the hell they're doing. And I have yet to find anything short of businesses where nobody can go anywhere else, primarily real estate, wherein, things haven't been driven into the ground. And everything that has been talked about, the show, the website, sorry, not the website, but the show that he used to run, the Apprentice and stuff like that. And that was all fun and games and kind of just, fake reality TV and stuff. And so many other things that this guy has done. But where the family and currently makes money is largely real estate related business machinations. So I chose this simply to draw attention to that because it just doesn't make any sense that anybody listens to the guy. Isabella Zavaris over at businessinsider.com wrote this article, and I won't really go into it much. His whole ideology is about marginalizing and anti-globalism, except that business really exploits globalism for its bottom line. And I've started doing some research into the true ratio of businesses, that fall along political parties. What business likes to do is distance itself from saying yay or nay to a lot of things, because the moment in a two-party system, the moment that you start talking about a political positioning of a business, it ends up isolating itself from the other side, right? So if a business says that it's pro-Democrat, then all of the Republicans absolutely hate it and want to set it on fire. And if you go the other way, then obviously the other side, again, depending on which side of the fence you're on, I've said this before, one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter, depending on which side of the argument you're on. And therein lies the rub, except that business does have an ideological bent made up by the people that are both a victim of its leadership and the culture of the enterprise. So a business really does have an ideological bent depending on who's running it and who's in it. That makes it possible for it to be run that way. And you can do that. You can look at that by going into what you would think would be a quote unquote liberal business and ask the leadership if they are Democrat, or the leadership in it if they are Democrat or Republican. And you will get a sense of the reality of the research that I'm just now beginning, because there is some research out there. But business doesn't like saying it out loud because, like I said earlier, it isolates half the market. But there is a demonstrable, researched and supported right now, right off the top, about 40% of business that reported an ideological bent is Republican. So can a business be isolationist? Can it be anti-globalism yet still exploit it and still have a solid foundation to argue that they are this way? So and Lunchbox, I think you're about to hint at what is a statement that has been in place for decades. But so Toll says he's no Warren Buffett. Donald should stick to real estate and architecture. There's some institutional basis for why I wouldn't want him staying in real estate. But that's for, I think, another discussion. But I'm really curious what Lunchbox is going to say, because there's the 3 dots at the end of his statement that says, or their statement, I'm sorry. Lunchbox says, business only has one ideology, in my opinion. And I'm going to wait a little bit because I know that there's some lag in the chat, but I am going to say it's to make profit. And the idea of that and I keep forgetting the person's name, and they ended up regretting it. I'm not going to be able to do this live, but the person that made that statement that the compass for a business is to make profit actually ended up on his deathbed saying that he regretted that statement, because what's been happening for the last 20 years is this migration away from that ideology where businesses have a social objective. So correct. And the only thing Trump is good at is promoting himself. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's all about making money. And if it means burying his wife in his golf course so that he can be tax-free. So be it. Very odd, right? To do. Maybe she really loved the golf course. But you say anything about family and suddenly you are the target of vitriol and anger and hatred. Yet it can be leveraged against his targets and their family. So I am not a big party to the party. So in this particular instance, everything is kind of a statement to promote something, to make money. And politics, unfortunately, should not be an objective to make money. And I've been called naive about several things, my perspectives of things, but you have to be the change you want to see in the world. And in this particular case, I think that every politician should have a suit that is identical to NASCAR, where every patch is in ratio to the amount of money that's paid into them, into their coffers, and you will find that the population of citizens that pay into political leadership is by far smaller than the business investments, and it's called regulatory capture. And I've mentioned this in previous episodes, wherein the amount of influence that the House of Representatives has over the direction of the country is diluted regularly because more people join. The population of the House of Representatives scales with the population, but senators do not. And so as the population grows, the Senate becomes much more powerful. And when wingnuts take control of the Senate, it hobbles any progressiveness in the country. And starts reeling. I mean, it's just like the common Joe's salary, stuck in perpetuity, what it was 30 years ago, and not moving forward. And that really is a shame. So Toll says, I have only once heard someone explain why fundraising is the metric for how good a candidate is for office, but it was so obscure. I don't remember who it was or what the explanation was. Well, it's not how good they are for office, really. When you come right down to it, it's how good they are to facilitating whoever it is that's paying them to be the voice of whoever it is that's paying them. And again, it's not about the people. It's about the money that's doled out to them, because I think that it would be wonderful for my senators to say that 3D printing of houses should be a fundamental aspect of building in my state. And but I don't have any money to give to them, so they don't even hear my voice, because I could run around all over the place and scream it, which I do. I'm even on stream screaming it, but I'm not going to get what I want, which is building code modified to allow for 3D printing of houses in my state. Although we have an article about that here we're going to catch up to. When what you're saying will cut into the bottom line, the first thing you will be accused of is being naive. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Sounds like Lawrence Lessig. Nice. That is what I thought a congressperson was supposed to do, listen to their constituents and not their donors. No, that's not true. Well, I mean, I think we're all on the same page here, Toll. We believe that. You have to listen to the constituents. But the way that it works is it filters down to a point, and that point is a proxy person that gets my message to the Senate or senator or representative or whoever it might be. But the Senate is captured, it's regulatory capture, right? Businesses pay a god-awful amount of money to their political parties and to them individually. At one point, the who was it? They were handing out checks on the House floor. John Boehner. Yeah, so it was John Boehner that was passing out checks that were in value of $10,000 while it was in session. He was handing out checks, and from lobbyists. He was the Republican minority leader from the tobacco industry. He even was interviewed as he was caught, and he says, well, it's not illegal, but it should be stopped. And it's kind of like the arsonist sitting there saying with a lit match in his hand, yeah, I burned down the house, but it's because I wanted to be warm, and it's not illegal because I wanted to be warm. It's illegal if I just set a fire and it's arson. But no, that's not what I did. I wanted to be warm, and hence I started a bonfire in the backyard. It just happens to be that the house is part of the backyard. And I mean, it was so mealy-mouthed how he did this. He basically said, yeah, really, I'm the victim here. Yeah, so what's the point of listening to constituents when they've been pre-selected? Yeah. And that's why, just like in business, our administrative leadership, our governing leadership, our elected officials shouldn't just follow this mantra of got mine, screw you. There's no value to the wealth. And so a lot of businesses now have a social component, and that is actually something that's driven into entrepreneurs. Now, it might be because they want to push the idea of being socially conscious so that it increases sales by the younger generations that see the world as being on the verge of collapse because of all of the historical greed and the quote-unquote late-stage capitalism. We've been in late-stage capitalism for a long time. But it's now our political leadership that's also being addressed. And unfortunately, in certain places, in certain parties, the fringe element is getting hold of the coffers, and nobody's going to walk away from it. Chris Murphy's walk across Connecticut every election season. The only places he stops are already voting for him, and the place he talks to are all pre-selected good Democrat voters. Yeah, well, I mean, in that stands to be the echo chamber, but really, are you going to go into a region, and unfortunately, here's the issue with this, are you going to go into a region where the people that should hear your message don't want to hear your message, and they're not going to change unless you kind of come across as placating, instead of saying, well, here's the reason why things need to be the way that they are. But it's hit or miss, if the message will land. And so they're going to quote unquote spend their money, which isn't really their money, it's your money. And they're going to spend their money possibly on the echo chamber instead of perhaps changing minds from a discussion. But that doesn't necessarily happen. So it's kind of like in many other areas, they spend their money with where the money might have a great return on their investment. But I'm not sure why anybody would go into places where they already have it, not just as a foothold, but a major segment of their voting body, simply to rub shoulders and not change the dynamic with areas that are anti whoever that person is. But that's not really what happens. They'll go into, like a Republican will go into a red state and promote it more so that maybe more people who are going to vote Republican already vote like harder and drive the message and donate more and fill the coffers. They're not going to go into a blue state unless it's a swing state. And then it's really about messaging. And to me, it's a lot of manipulation by both parties. But some, to me, it's Republican gaslighting is just overwhelming. And unfortunately, I see it as being, nobody talks about the true issue here, which is things like anti-globalism, which has produced such great wealth. Globalism and working with countries and sharing resources and exchange of goods and services have generated a massive amount of wealth for U.S. companies and by proxy individuals employed. Okay, it's just without a doubt true. But the direction that things are going is that they're going to try, and I'm talking about Republicans specifically, and more the fringer side of the Republican Party is going to try and isolate the Republican Party more. And if they get control over both sides, they're going to kind of pull away. And we'll read about that here in a minute. But yeah, I just really, this article is talking about an airline, and he drove it into the ground, flew it into the ground, saying that they don't know what they're doing. Yeah, probably because they're trying to pay the plurality of people and keep it an ongoing enterprise, an ongoing concern, instead of sucking away value to personal wealth and then burying it in the ground and everybody losing their jobs, and it'll collapse like as a dumpster fire. It won't collapse gently and everybody disperses into other areas, other businesses, and are hired. Everybody with some type of severance. No, it's cut it, golden parachute for senior leadership, screw you, bye. And again, it's sociopathic in its nature. It isn't as a social concern. It's literally, again, screw you, got mine, bye. So let me move on to the next article. I hate quoting Pelosi, but she said she straight up said a glass of blue water could have won AOC's district. Yeah, probably. Said it before and will continue to say it. Trump is a sleazeball businessman, and that's why he was so successful as a president. Yeah, there's a lot of discussion there, but I try and shy away from it unless it has some type of sociological, socioeconomic, or some type of social impact, because I don't find value in anything that they say, because their ideology is not in line with society, not with growth, not with progression, not with making the totality of the population more educated or make more capable, or open up more opportunity. No, it's about making the wealthy wealthier and the powerful with more power, and eventually getting to the point where they're trying to enslave society again, with kings and families just running the institution of the United States, and then by proxy emboldening the other fascists to control their countries. And we've seen it happen. Within a year, Turkey went from a democratic country to full-out fascism, theological fascist state. And I'm not making any friends by saying all of this out loud, that's for sure. Then why did the incumbent glass of blue water lose his primary? Anomalies. In genetics, it's called wobble. Something can happen. The population does change. We have seen in the United States, in the entire country, vote a particular way. Yeah. Any Democrat. That's why blue water. Yeah. Any glass of blue water. Yeah, and Lunchbox, the joke was getting true. It was no longer funny because it's true. And then, I mean, and I think that anything can be joked about. Anything at all can be joked about. It's all about the context of it and the nature of it. So I don't think that anything can be entirely excluded. You also have to read the room, but I'm sure a joke that I say will upset people at times. But so this next article is a law professor, Danielle Citron, says privacy is essential to human flourishing, and I agree to a point. Yeah. So yeah, man, I want to get into that conversation, but here I'll keep going through the news. Y'all keep talking. So privacy is essential to human flourishing, and I agree to a point. So Danielle Citron is a professor of law at the University of Virginia School of Law, where she specializes in privacy and civil rights. She obviously is promoting a book, so it says her new book, The Fight for Privacy, Protecting Dignity, Identity, and Love in Our Digital Age, outlines the 21st century assault on privacy from Spying Incorporated. There is another term for that, and while a lot of people are worried about quote-unquote Big Brother, the reality is that Little Sister has been spying on us well beyond even government in the macro sense. Government really doesn't care about who and what you do until you try to harm the institution in either the micro level and it's detected, like at a state or city or some type of institution for government, or on the macro level, which I had been saying for 8 years. So 8 years ago, I started talking on the idea of what is the thing that could harm the U.S. society the most. And the people that I would talk to would say things like hacking the power grid or disrupting the flow of fresh water or damaging a nuclear power plant and causing like thermal runaway, some nuclear disaster or something like that. And in every one of the issues that was presented to me, I always said, well, this doesn't do much. This is isolated. You take out the power grid and all you do is have darkness for a while, and then somebody will come along and fix it. Same thing with the water supply. Unless you run up to Michigan and you have somebody that, for lack of common sense and not doing the due diligence, changes the water supply and it leaches lead into the system for a continued period of time, and suddenly you get hot spots of illness, and then you don't really do anything about it. You just call it an anomaly or a hot spot. Well, this is kind of what this is. But this thing that I said a while back was, and the question that I posed to the audience is, well, what could you do to really damage society? And everybody said various things, and I said, well, what about impugning the integrity of the electoral process in the United States? And you can imagine my surprise when it started coming true, where people were talking about it, but giving it credence, even flying in the face of zero evidence. They were still beating the drum that an election was stolen, zero evidence. And the only evidence that we have ever found, those of us who follow this, has always been the very vocal people who say the election was stolen. They are the ones that are stealing or trying to, but failing, getting caught. So for instance, there was a guy who said, my dead wife voted for Republican. My dead wife voted Democrat, but she would never have done that. And then it turns out that he was the one that faked her vote. And so he faced criminal charges. And the reason why I say all of this in the context of this privacy is essential for human flourishing, I agree to a point. The problem, though, is abuse happens in the dark, and privacy closes the door on things when it's slammed shut too far. And where I think that there shouldn't be any privacy except for who or what you actually did, but it should be audited, right? You should have the ability to audit it, is who you vote for. But our government leadership shouldn't have the same level of privacy. What they do publicly and privately seems to be a revolving door for their flourishing at the expense of the common person. So we have senators and other Congress critters that are sitting there doing insider trading, or the perception of it, and then denying that the light should be shined on this, so that the optics of this go away. And people go, they mock the phrase, the optics, please, I'm not doing anything wrong. Well, that's not quite true. You do have insider information, and the plurality of people have none of what you have access to. And so you could sit there and be sipping some tea in the morning the next day after a committee meeting, and you just drop a little statement, and your husband or your sister or somebody says, oh, let me go trade on that information. Well, they don't necessarily tell you that they're going to use your information. But there are people out there that have received insider information but never did anything with it because their ethics don't allow them to, or their position means that they would be directly audited. To give you, again, perspective of this, if people in my sphere were to trade on some of the information that they have access to, they would immediately have been audited and criminal charges pressed against them for doing exactly what the public perceives our Congress critters doing. So privacy is essential, but it's essential to the private citizen, but not to those who represent us. They should have a little bit less privacy because they are exposing the public to their machinations from a privileged position. So this article goes into greater detail. It's from The Observer, but aggregated from The Guardian. And it's Lori Clark who writes this article. A law professor, Danielle Citron, privacy is essential to human flourishing. And Toll says, I wish that whistleblower protections haven't been abused like they have been in recent years. And I agree too. Whistleblower protections, people don't blow the whistle because they're happy. They don't need whistleblower protections because somebody's doing a great job and somebody blows the whistle. Why does the good not get reprimanded, but when somebody is a bad actor and a whistleblower comes out, you have to get witness protection? It's because there's money and power and influence involved. And that's why whistleblower protections have to be extremely strong. Right now, we've got a U.S. citizen that has gone to Russia for protection because if he comes back to the United States, he's going to be deleted in one way or another. He's going to be put in jail. He's going to be prosecuted. Who knows? But now he's like permanently in Russia, for crying out loud. An intelligence operative in Russia. It's wild. I'm flabbergasted that we would do this instead of just accepting what was done and say, okay, we need to clean up our act and not do this and not do that, and act with a solid moral compass. It's just weird. Yeah. No. I understand that that it wasn't intentional, but now he's there. So, and now we have whistleblowers that come out of companies that get the same issues, that they want to unionize, and all kinds of things get weaponized against somebody that wants to unionize. There is no protecting dignity, identity, anything from a company, which is little sister. That is the phrase, little sister. Little sister knows everything that you do. Your ISP knows about every website that you go to. Your phone if it isn't set up the right way, is exfiltrating GPS data, and the cell signal is triangulating you from cell towers. So you can be traveling and not even making a phone call, and you'll hop from one cell to another, and all it takes is a court order to find your last location. But Big Brother doesn't care about you. Toll says it's funny that Big Brother is always watching and little sister already knows it all. Yeah, because you're not suspecting that, right? And WikiLeaks is another issue. There was all kinds of issues with WikiLeaks. But the reality is that it was a needed aspect of evolution in society, and now it's all but forgotten, except for the punitive aspects of WikiLeaks. Society's still hell-bent. Some people in society are still hell-bent on pursuing WikiLeaks. But to me, I think this shining the light is fine, except for the more clandestine operations that are designed to stymie damage being perpetrated on other countries and on the United States. There are issues here that I think that should remain without light shining on them, but they aren't representative typically of internal machinations. It's all about protecting, and that should still remain in the dark. Whistleblowing, even if you whistle loud and it becomes public about something that was done outside, it should be evaluated for the weight. And if it was harmful to other countries to prosecute this, whatever was whistleblown, then a solution should be found. And if it doesn't, then the whistleblower is actually right. I mean, we've had companies from the United States and others that in other places, other countries do this to other countries, where they've leaked chemicals and people have met their demise because of an accident, and it gets pushed under the rug because, well, it's somewhere else. So there are concerns that I have with absolute privacy. But you and me and others that are surfing the web and whatever, it doesn't matter. It shouldn't be. Yeah, that's just one. But this happens on the regular with manufacturing accidents in places like China, India, all over Africa. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty brutal. But the citizenry doesn't necessarily hear about it because, well, it's an isolated case, but it happens with such frequency that it really isn't isolated. So what I think this person thinks is that we need a standardized right to be forgotten type of environment where if I end my relationship with a business, it ends the relationship. And if I seek to open it back up, then you have fresher data, fine. But while I don't want to be in a relationship, I should be able to end my account. You freeze my data, it's going to be chill. You can actually mark it as being frozen data so that marketing doesn't have to worry about how fresh my data is. And I am no longer on your radar. You no longer market to me, but that's not what happens. I get an overwhelming number of emails each day that is spam, even though I have spam alerts in place to block them. Now I get them from my ISP. But yeah, and opt out should always be the default setting, and it should be much more overt. But that's not what happens. What we really need is our Congress critters saying we have a right to be forgotten. And if we mark this as forget me, then we end the relationship. And I always equate this to a relationship. If you break up with your significant other, there was a reason, and I'm taking my stuff and you're taking your stuff. It might be half of my stuff and whatever, but the nature of it is that we are ending the relationship, and so be it. Now, if you keep on hounding me in the real world as my ex-significant other, that's called stalking. But in business, it's just good business, and it's just trying to reignite the optimization of my advertising engine. Well, we're sending you some coupons. That's not what this should be. So it says, in situations similar in the UK General Data Protection Regulation requires consent before processing sensitive data and personal data. In the UK's Information Commissioner's Office investigated the 3 biggest credit reference agencies. 2 agreed to stop processing sensitive data, and 1 won't settle. But the ICO hasn't investigated every one of the 1,000 data brokers. Protection by enforcement is spotty. So Tull says, while I tend to agree with opt-out being default, I understand the psychology of business having opt-in as the default. Even the minimal effort of clicking a little box is too much effort to opt anything, right? Well, and that's the business's perspective. And one might argue, well, they created the account because they wanted to opt into whatever it was my business was offering. So you're opting in automatically. But it really should be the default setting is opt out, and I should be able to check a box that says opt in as I'm signing up. And if that's the case, then so be it. And that actually has been happening quite a lot with websites that I've been going to lately. And by lately, I mean in internet time, 5 years is a long time. So I'd say in the last 10 years, every site that I've been going to that is commercial in a sense, not a social site, has me opting in by a check. So not an automatic opt-in. Want to add phone numbers to the list of off-limit things? Yeah, there's all kinds of personally identifiable information. Phone numbers is tantamount to telling you my address, essentially, to me, because you can always get me wherever I am. I mean, this thing is always with me. It's half an arm's reach away from my bed. I mean, it's with me 24 hours a day. Yeah. So a long time ago, I actually spun up a service that stopped spam from being sent from a spam server. So if somebody hacked into somebody and started sending spam mail, or if anybody tried to get in touch with the people that subscribed to my service, it blocked the spam or any unwanted mail from ever even being sent by the server. And it would keep on trying. The sending server would try again as long as it followed SMTP POP rules. The sending server would keep on trying periodically and then time out and just bounce it back, or it would bounce back immediately and say it can't be sent, depending on how it was configured. Interestingly enough, people didn't want to pay for it, not to the level that was required to run as a business without getting investors. And at that time, and I still am, I am anti-investor. There's always a demand in raising the return on the investment. You know, month after month, you have to hit certain quotas so that everybody is a little bit richer. And while it can turn you into a mega corporation, you have a board. The moment you have investors, you have a board. Unless they're an angel investor and they opt out of providing any kind of guidance or say in the operation. But the moment you as a CEO, you as a entrepreneur are no longer the one that has absolute control, you always have to deal with the other investors. So yeah, robodialers need to go away and all that. So, and that's what all of this is. People know about people. And the moment they do, as a commercial enterprise, they start spamming and doing all kinds of stuff. There was a study done where somebody took anonymized medical records and the newspaper in Florida, and connected the two together to identify people from their anonymized medical records that were used in academia. Quite intriguing that you could deobfuscate what was thought to be private data. Do you guys hear pardon me, let me rephrase that. Do you hear the music that's playing? I'm doing this for Spooktober. I'm letting some sound effects play underneath. Is it too loud? This is gonna suck if it's really loud. Good. I mean, sorry, Toll. Didn't mean to mess with you. Yeah, so it's really quiet, and that's kind of intentional. So, okay, cool. So yeah, when I first started, my intro music was this spooky music. So I hope y'all kind of get a kick out of it. Okay, so I've got a whole bunch more articles. Let me get off my soapbox for a little bit. So Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville opened a new 35-acre RV park and lodge hotel in a popular tourist town, and Business Insider loves to go on field trips. So let's take a look at this RV park. I don't know if you're really into RVs and travel and stuff like that. I know, is it Toll? I think Toll is a trucker. So you're on the road a lot, right? Brittany Chang over at businessinsider.com wrote this article, and it's Camp Margaritaville RV Resort and Lodge Pigeon Forge celebrated its grand opening in September, and it's a 35-acre. Yeah, I love Jimmy Buffett as well. Margaritaville is kind of my jam. I actually love it. I've never been to any of their restaurants. They actually spun up restaurants. Oh, you're not on the road a lot? Yet. Okay, that's the job interview. Okay, well, good luck, Toll. Yeah, if I could live this life, I probably would. Not so much traveling all over the place. Nowadays, you know, I think my social skills are a little broken. People love chatting with me, and I love chatting with people. Don't get me wrong. But traveling to places during the pandemic and post-pandemic, I'm still a little gun shy. You know, I hear somebody sneeze and everything kind of puckers up. So this thing has this lazy river going around it. It's a pool you can swim around in. There's not restaurants. There's hotels in Hawaii that have this lazy river that I love the idea of. So when you get your CDL, you can drive one of those big RVs, right? Yeah. Oh boy. Good luck, Toll. That's like going to the restaurant, to a grocery store and saying, do you need anything via text? And then you start getting slammed. But everybody said no when you first left. Yeah. You should have hid that. No, I can't drive anything big except this truck behind me. Yeah, that's the only thing. Lunchbox says, people enjoy chatting with me for the first half of the conversation. Yeah, I know the feeling. So this looks pretty cool, offering Margaritaville fans a laid-back respite from the bustling mountainside vacation destination. I dig that. That's why I love the idea of going to Jamaica and just hanging out at a resort that's all-inclusive, and I don't necessarily have to go anywhere. I don't have to mess with anything. I like just chilling. Get a super sleeper tractor with a fifth wheel and make money while you tour. Interesting. Oh, can you make a mobile Airbnb? You just put people in the back and drive, and then you stop. You could be like a land-based, what do you call it? Oh my gosh. The dead air is killing me. Yeah, so you could be like the ships. Doggone it, man. I don't know what's going on with me. Maybe my medication is making my brain fall out of my head. But you could just you could be a land-based, a cruise ship, but a land-based yacht. And you could just put people in there. You're the captain, but you're driving them from place to place and stopping off at destinations that are on the cruise ship agenda, and you can disembark and re-embark. Every day or every other day, you drive somewhere and say, "Okay, here, get out. This is a truck stop." Yeah, basically a personalized bus ride. Yeah, you could charge like $1,400 for like a 5-day trip, and they have to pay an extra $1,000 for the discussion, the first half of a discussion, and then you'll stop, because the second half you have to start paying them back, like Lunchbox, right? I like this idea. Yeah, so if no, not a Greyhound, because they eat and they poo all over the place. I know Greyhound are buses. God. I just know that anybody that's listening to this podcast later on is going to sit there and go, is this guy for real? So they have all kinds of stuff where you can go and check out Margaritaville RV. And this eastern Tennessee town is already home to the brand's restaurant and 2 additional successful hotels, or 3 if you're counting the other location in Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Just a short drive from Pigeon Forge. Look at that. Took a train. Wait, your in-laws took a train route like that, and they took a train tour that left Boston, went to Chicago, St. Louis, New Orleans, and then back up to New England. That sounds like fun. I wish that trains would go across the country, but at some point you have to get out and ride a bike somewhere. That's kind of disappointing. I'd pay big money for a sleeper car that went from coast to coast. But it doesn't exist. So Pigeon Forge, Margaritaville. Go check it out. The next article, and I don't know if I'm actually putting these in the chat, man. This is just horrible. I'm so easily distracted by the conversation. Thank you. Tim Cook says there's 4 traits he looks for in an Apple employee. It's been very good formula for them. Let's just jump into this article and let's see if they enumerate it cleanly or if I have to go hunting for it. Yeah, I got to go hunting for it. They may not actually say what all 4 of them are. Tim Cook doesn't spend his days reviewing resumes, but in his 11-year stint at Apple, or as Apple's CEO, he's determined that it takes what it takes to thrive at the company. The University of Naples Federico II's commencement ceremony this week, Cook told graduates at the Naples, Italy University that he noticed Apple's success depends on its culture and who it hires. For instance, the company typically seeks out employees with 4 shared skills: the ability to collaborate, creativity, curiosity, and expertise. How pithy and nebulous. So what level of expertise? Probably the expertise at the PhD level and higher, or some boots on the ground level. I think you have to be a pretty big star and have social skills. So that's that collaborate part. And then to think outside the box, you need creativity and curiosity. These are the 4 skills that every employer should want. So your dream job, Toll, would be the hauler of a NASCAR team? Yeah. Wow. So how many times have you seen that movie, Cars? Let's move on to the next article while I wait for Toll to answer that. You could be the hauler for Cars. Too many times. Sons love it. Sure, your sons love it. Got it. Hurricane Ian amplifies urgent need for resilient, renewable, and just energy grid. Yeah, Mac, that's right. There you go. Cool. Thanks for reminding me. That's it. I'm declaring chat my second brain. I appreciate it. Hurricane Ian can be remembered as one of the most destructive storms in U.S. history, leaving an estimated 2.5 million people in Florida and all of Cuba without electricity as the death toll mounts. Sorry to have to say that out loud. This comes days after Hurricane Fiona battered Puerto Rico and the DR, wiping out power to huge swaths of those islands. This is why I don't think that wind power and solar power have the ability to survive in their current state. They're not hardened in any real substantial way. But I think that things like nuclear power can be defensible, not necessarily portable, but that's what power is in batteries. That's why we would have battery systems that can survive things like a hurricane. But wind generation fails when there's a hurricane. It can be damaged beyond repair and you have to just rebuild everything. Solar power can be damaged with something as simple as a BB gun. And so I just don't. And the only other thing would be hydroelectric and geothermal, but those suffer from their own issues, like locations. Not everything has the ability to use those. So I think we always come back to nuke power in ohmTown. You'd never own a Mac. They are rebranded Volvos and they are riddled with electrical problems. You want a Peterbilt or a Freightliner Cascadia. I actually consulted a company that used to make custom grills for Peterbilt and Freightliner. If you wanted to, put something special on your truck, you would go to this company. But I don't hype that. I don't hype companies that I don't really discuss companies that I consult with. All their goodwill is theirs, so you'd never be able to find out. They won't talk about me anyway. It's part of the contract. They have to take their. Everybody has to take their stuff off periodically, particularly the stuff out in the ocean as well. No, it's not about free advertising. It's about the goodwill. Like a company that consults with somebody and solves a problem, I don't want them saying that I had anything to do with it. That way, they get all the goodwill, the benefit from the solution, instead of people going, well, it was him that did it. So compounding the suffering is the fact that corporate utilities, state regulators, and politicians are standing in the way of distributed renewable energy like rooftop and community solar. I think it's a little bit... I think it's a bigger problem that the renewable side of this might be hyped, but it isn't a defensible position. I think that homes that are 3D printed are relatively immune from hurricanes. Only in the most horrendous conditions and with the most specific situations would a 3D printed house be damaged. Placing them at the same level as sea level and then having a 15-foot storm surge means that, well, things are going to get wet, but at least they're not going to be picked up off their foundation and float away, which I witnessed several times here in Ian's path. So this article by The Hill is written by Augusta Wilson, an opinion contributor. I think that I would love to write something for, The Hill. I've never done it yet. I have never even approached them, but I think that there needs to be more discussion about this. And it's definitely not renewable in the purest sense of renewable power. We need nuclear power that feeds into renewable supported power grids. And we need to change the dynamic about timber built homes. This whole, sticks and staples construction means that a storm can just roll through, lift the roof off, and the sides fall over, or enough water can surge into the place And because construction and lumber and everything in it is buoyant, it's going to just pick right up and float away. Particularly with the twisting of the water, there's so much hydrostatic pressure there, torque on the building, it'll just pick up and remove itself from the staples that are holding it down. I mean, all it is big old nails holding down 2x4s, and it's construction grade lumber, so it's not like it's this commercial fabricated material that is designed to, well, I mean, anything organic is going to split apart. If it's wood, it's going to follow the grain and just tear itself right off. So I think we have building wrong, but that'll have to come in time. So this article goes into greater detail about this. Distributed energy threatens corporate utilities' bottom line, so monopolies. I mean, it just goes on about green energy, which is, or renewable energy. And while I agree that it threatens business, I think that the state, and by state, I mean the local state, like Florida, should seek nuclear power generation, and every state should, and by proxy, the United States should pursue it, because then we are in control of it. And even if it's nationalized, it's supported by government contracting, which means that all of these contractors will know how deep the pockets go when they make bids. And if you've ever paid attention to government contracting, you know there's some serious money in there. People don't just do it because they think it's a great free thing to do for the nation. It's because it puts some serious food on the table for those who get awarded. And nuclear power is not a cheap date, so there's some serious money there. Come on, Elon, focus on that. The next, I won't get sidetracked by solar power and Elon Musk's brother. Anyway, it's just not worth it. Why employers still can't get staff back into the office. And that is because it doesn't make any sense to try and drag people back into the office. He's scared of nuclear. Yeah, probably because he can't buy his way into the CEO position. So you haven't been into the office this week? Why? The worker in question hadn't expected such an email from his boss. Based in Asia, but working for a large U.S. media organization, he had been on an overseas work trip, and his failure to swipe his pass at the building's turnstiles while he was away had triggered an alert. This is the new era of oversight by a CEO, and if I can get my job done on a beach or in a coffee shop, then so be it. It really shouldn't matter where I get the job done, but apparently some CEOs see otherwise. Joanna Partridge is the author of this over at The Guardian. Employees have grown to love the flexibility of remote working, and firms keen to keep their staff can do little about it. This comes up quite a bit in businesses. Some small businesses, but larger businesses that are run by people who don't see what the future can hold, demand that people are back in a cubicle instead of being comfortable and not having to spend 2 hours in transit just to get somewhere, and the wear and tear on their vehicle and the money that's spent on gas. By the way, this is a good time for me to just reiterate the stock market numbers. Dow Jones fell 500, S&P fell 55, NASDAQ fell 162. Bitcoin is hovering around 19,000. I won't even, it rises a little bit and falls. It fell 160 today. That's one that you have to watch regularly. And for the first time, I've seen in the last, I'd say 2 weeks, I've seen the gas price actually stumble, wait for it, 0.004 of a penny. I know. Times they are changing. Businesses really shouldn't expect their employees to return to the office. I think that the new normal should be you just roll with it, and let people work where they can work as best they can work with the tools that you give them as an employer. Toll had this conversation with their son. They were a generation that has been inventing the technology, and the generation getting into the workforce now has always had it. So they posed the question you just did. If I can do the same quality of work at home, then why do I need to go to the office? Yes. Now, there is some argument in play regarding the ability to network, except that in this new dynamic, we are networking. We're networking via vehicles like Discord and Skype and Zoom and countless other means of communication. There's a lot. And so like Cisco has one, and just everybody has one. But 30 years ago, I was beta testing ICQ. I was one of the early beta testers. And now it's back, but it's a Russian messaging service. Not to mention the countless silos of information where people are talking to each other, coworkers, via texting, straight texting in groups, and just the myriad way. So the business needs to find a modern way of providing remote oversight. So, hey, let's have a Zoom meeting doesn't amount to being like a hover parent, just constantly observing them because it's oppressive. It's dystopian. So Toll says, and quite a few businesses have taken the opportunity to downsize their physical footprint. If they don't need 25,000 square feet of office space, then why pay the maintenance and taxes and fees and stuff like that? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I know, Toll. That's why I dropped it out there, because I knew somebody would appreciate that. So one of the problems, though, with this idea of having a remote workforce is that a business has more than just their bottom line as a valuation. Their capital improvements lead to a business being of more value. And if their business is no longer encapsulated within, four walls and a roof, then suddenly the business is worth less. Except for the information. The information, as times change, I think will become more valuable. So the culmination of my expected changes for the future, if everybody says, yeah, I agree with what Mayor Watt wants in his ohmTown universe. There would be more privacy for the individual. We'd be able to cut off the lines of information gathering. So the current information would be of more value, and it's already there's a freshness metric that's in play for aging information in a service that relies on information. So they're always pinging to make sure that the people are fresh. Twitter suffers from this bot thing, but it's about freshness as well. If the bot is getting stale, then they could close the account or mark it as being stale. And so the information is more valuable for that stuff that is fresh. Every business suffers through this. But again, somebody that might want to buy Twitter and none of their offices are filled to capacity with employees, basically they're burning money in San Francisco for very expensive real estate that they don't need. So they force people to be in the business so that they can say, yeah, we have bodies in seats, instead of saying, well, we have 25,000 employees scattered around the world, which to me is progressive and a happier employee base. But just to go back a little bit, the problem here is that networking can tend to fail, wherein, and I'm talking about social networking, people don't make connections as easily, but I still say that there's enough communication that people can hang out. And then people locally within their regions can meet for like dinner and more social stuff. And that's where it's really important, that social aspect of it. I can't believe Toll's wife actually uses ICQ's tone on her phone, because that's like getting in the Wayback Machine. So Toll says that they actually researched this during the PMP course. I hope you got it awarded. That would be great. The IP of a business is infinitely more valuable than their physical or liquidable, liquid assets. And the ability to incorporate multiple experts from around the world has its challenges in the storming and norming phases. Yeah. Performing phase typically has huge benefits such as 24/7 progress during an agile project. Yep, absolutely. That's why I use consultants from around the world. And you get superior people because there is a greater array of people that are dedicated to the material versus I get a silo of somebody because somebody that I'm working with might say, well, I only want to work with somebody that's from the United States. And I'm like, well, you're actually limiting your options quite a bit because there are some seriously passionate people that want to get paid real money to do a gig, and I can lead you to them if you are so interested. But then, sometimes they'll say, well, I just want somebody from the US. Okay. And to be honest, sometimes even I flinch because I've actually consulted with somebody before and they've said, hey, that's a great idea. And then they ghosted me. They never made it happen. And then competitors hit the market. But I saw that the writing was already on the wall, and so I killed the project. But you never know. I mean, you could find a real solid solution and a great asset for a business from around the world. And that's globalism. And a lot of businesses benefit from this globalism, yet kind of want to isolate in other ways. Isolate the country, but the business can exploit this globalism aspect. Don't have the requisite project manager hours to be eligible. That's a bummer. Unless they've changed, I thought that you could it's a different classification for PMP. I thought that they had kind of like an all but doctor, but I don't remember. It's been a long time since I looked at PMP. You don't have the requisite project management, and you're interviewing with Promote Six Sigma as one of their values. Oh. Yeah, so you already have that Six Sigma black belt. So this is one of the things that I was talking about earlier. The first 2-story 3D printed concrete home in the US is taking shape in Houston. Take a look at how the 4,000 square foot house is being built. One of the biggest problems that I have seen in 3D printing of houses is that second floor becomes an issue because you have to put something in between a layer of 3D printed material. But really, I don't think it's an issue nowadays. We've grown past this concern of slumping and things. Let's see, you have to laugh a little because all of the movies of the 80s and most of the animes that exist predicted how we wouldn't have a world order or global government. And we sort of do. The ultra rich controlling everything. I guess it's pivoting with wingnuts. So I don't know where our dystopia will land, but I still think that the Large Hadron Collider created a fractured timeline and we ended up where we are because of them. That is a joke, just in case anybody is wondering where my mind is in all of this. But yeah, I like kind of stoking people's... Where is he actually positioned in this? Because I'm all about just gathering up as much information as possible. I like being rather holistic, and I'll even entertain a good conspiracy. I don't know where our dystopia will land. I bet it's not Mars or the moon. No, it's firmly planted on the Earth. Our dystopia will arrive. We just don't know which bus stop it's going to be, which crazy bus stop it'll be. So let's take a look at this 3D printed concrete home that's actually 2 stories and 4,000 square feet. It'll be the first of its kind, according to companies behind the project. Texas is becoming a hub of 3D printed real estate. Yes, I keep hearing, oh yeah, Bikini Bottom. And that's who our next president will be. Are we ready, kids? Texas is about to get yet another 3D printed house. Every time I hear about 3D printing, by the way, in the United States, it seems to be in Texas. I'm not sure if they really press. Well, wait for it. You'll see. 3D printing can be as massive as the steel beams that support the print head can span. So just think about how big container ship, what do they call them? I can't remember what they call them. The heavy mover for the container ships, like they grab all of the containers off of the ship. Those things are massive. And that's exactly what I think 3D printing should be. Just they plant the rails down, they plop this thing on there, and everything prints, and then you roll down to the next house and 3D print it, roll down to the next house, 3D print it. That's really how I think it should be. The only problem is the foundations, and that's it. You have to pour a foundation so that you have fixed plumbing locations and stuff like that. Yeah, and so, you have to be honest. Texas really is it's kind of challenging the Silicon Valley in terms of tech, and I'll never flinch when I say that. I'll flinch about politics in Texas, but not about its adoption of technology, at least development. It doesn't necessarily adopt the technology that gets innovated in its borders. But so unlike its printed predecessors, this upcoming single family home, my God, is in Houston. It'll be the first multi-story printed project in the U.S., according to the companies behind it. That's the render of what it's going to look like. They're leaving the strata of the 3D print, the lines, I guess, to highlight what it's going to look like as a 3D printed house. It becomes hermetically sealed. It's thick walls. Like, these things end up being like 3 feet thick. I mean, it's amazing. Looks like recycled paper. Yeah, because it kind of slumps a little, oozes out on the sides. But you could skim across this with a trowel as it is drying, and do away with that entirely. It's really up to how you feel as the owner of the house. And you can also essentially stick siding onto it if you want to. You just fix it with nails and other things, and it's a whole lot more reliable and stable than any timber house. So yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's a fancy concrete mixer, and in some countries they actually use the material from the house itself. Where the plot of land is, they just dig down for the basement, and then they take all of that material, and with another binding agent that's matched to the soil, they 3D print the house on top of that, or in the hole and up. You use less than the material that's inside the hole, and that's all it is. You just mix. Yep. And they always do testing beforehand, so the concrete mix, unless somebody really, wet the bed, it will be correct for concrete. So there you go. It's starting. That's somewhat the size of it. And so if you see right here in the bottom left corner, and I'll scroll up a little bit, that is a person right there. So you can see that at least this segment of this is about 12 feet wide by 12 feet in one direction, and maybe, I don't know, 30, 40 feet wide. So if they're doing it in little segments, then they can move the printer around. And I don't know which way the gantry actually goes in its full width. So maybe it says in the article, and I'll scroll down a little bit. It is a 4,000 square foot home, so it's quite large. And those are the walls. That's the spaces between the walls. And with all of that becomes insulation and sound deadening. It is a spectacular solution, and ultimately way more safe than any timber built home you can possibly imagine. If you want a safe house, then a 3D printed cement house is in its entirety a safe house. If you want to avoid a storm, this is where you go. If you want to stop a fire, this is where you go. The only problem with cement is that it off gases, so you always have to have venting. But with a timber built house, the house literally breathes. It swells and shrinks as the sun beats down on it each day, and then the winter cold and day cold when the night goes down. When the sun goes down, it becomes night. Your house literally shrinks. It is a living entity because it's made of wood, and wood decomposes over time. Regardless of how safe you think your house is, in 100 years, that timber is going to be questionable. But cement is a solid block, and it will stay that way in perpetuity. So you find it interesting, Tull, that they use the phrase 3D printed. It's not really printing anything. It's just concrete pump mixed into a CNC machine. Yeah, and that's essentially what they refer to it as FDM. So basically, it's just depositing layer after layer after layer instead of just one big slump mold, like the foundation of a house, right? They just pump cement into a form, and then they skim it and make it smooth, and then they 3D print layer after layer on top. So in essence, once they get the ratio right, nobody has to sit there, and nobody has to monitor it actually running. So at the end of the day, it takes one person and a design plan to monitor it, stop it if there's a problem, fix whatever might be happening, and then resume the print. So the human component is actually removed, and you do that, Tull, and Tull says that they do this. And I've built houses with people before, and I know from empirical experience there's never a true wall in a human built house, but these walls are true because it's literally a CNC, except that it's not cutting anything away. It's oozing cement out in a fixed form, and the ratio is just right so that you can reliably count on the wall being built up. And I've got 3D printers that do this, but with plastic and other materials. So this is actually it says it's going to combine concrete, 3D printing, construction tech, and wood framing. Where that wood framing is coming into play is probably the flooring for the second floor. It's going to be the trusses and stuff, because it's really expensive and heavy to use concrete forms for trusses. So it says, and that's the point. By integrating the widely used home building technique, the team is able to increase the applicability of the tech, according to the press release. So this is doing basically the foundation material for each floor, and I think that it's amazing. I love the idea of it. So it says the Houston home will be made up of 3D printed concrete cores that will then be connected by the wood framing. And I would probably say that only the internal framing is going to be wood. Maybe the floor trusses are wood too. I mean, you can make composite wood trusses. The technology for that is pretty easy nowadays, but 3D printing a beam is very expensive and heavy. It has to be solid and cured perfectly so that there's no form issues. But printing walls just by oozing cement is a piece of cake. And I think that needs to expand beyond Texas. So there you go. That's how big this is going to look. And that looks like it's actually just a portion of it. They have another one that I spoke about in March. 3D printing construction startup Icon unveiled the House Zero, a 2,000 square foot luxury home in adjacent tiny home in Austin. Yeah, so concrete will get hot. I mean, the sun will beat down on it, but the roof will abate some of that. But the air conditioning inside will be substantially better than in a timber-built home, because the timber-built home oozes. It has holes. It breathes. It off-gasses and evacuates each night, each day, and constantly. It's always leaking. And while we stop water from infiltrating, it's always off-gassing. So, yeah. Exactly. The only problem with concrete is that it actually off-gasses its own it has a large carbon footprint for being cement. It's not biological, but it actually has an off-gassing component that contributes to greenhouse gases. But I would suffer through this to make something that lasts in perpetuity and doesn't literally age itself out of existence. Timber-built homes fail regularly because of all kinds of stuff. There isn't an insect in the world that's going to get into concrete unless somebody drills a hole in there and some wasp or something starts making a nest inside the wall. And then all you need really is a diamond bit saw, and you can cut a hole in it and get them all out, then patch it right back up. It's much harder with timber built stuff, more complex, I should say. And once a timber built home is unsealed because of some other construction or renovation or whatever, it's always a question about the integrity of the house. Always. Even you could sit there and have a consultant that says, no, it's going to be perfect. Yeah, it never really is. There's always something that might infiltrate, particularly water. You smell the stone dust from concrete for hours after you get out of work. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I've done all of this kind of stuff to a lighter degree because I always want to have some understanding of how it works. Unfortunately, with time comes innovations that I'm not privy to, so I always respect subject matter experts and stuff in the fields that I talk about. So I always work with people that are much brighter than me in their particular areas. So yeah, see? So Toll knows exactly what I'm talking about because he's going to live in it. Or they are living it, I'm sorry. House sags in front from a renovation the owners did. Yeah, I am actually dealing with something that the builder failed to compact the earth in my driveway properly. And so it's dipping down to the point where if there is anything in my trunk, my car skims the pad in my garage as I enter it. So I've got to get it done before winter comes. So stick framing is particularly short-lived. Yep, absolutely. Thanks for joining the conversation, Lunchbox. Yep, totally agree. The house you grew up in was built before the Civil War, and it's still fine today. I'm curious how it was built. Because it was probably, if it wasn't brick, then it probably used wood that was, it's no longer around. What is it? Oh, what is that? What is it called? It's not oak. It might be hickory. There's a wood that is no longer in the United States. We exhausted it. And that wood used for timber framing in older houses, I don't think it was oak though. Maybe it was. I'm really sorry if it kind of dead air because I leave everything in this when I submit this as a podcast. So. Because I do some woodworking and I can't remember what it is. And that's really going to bother me until I find out what it is. Curses. Darn brain is not working. At any rate, yeah, there's certain, and the timber is huge, and that really is the reason why it still persists. These 2x4s, 2x6s, and cheap lumber that you get from Home Depot and Lowe's and other builder grade materials, it's designed to just get it on the ground and sold, and then it becomes the owner's problem until it collapses or gets sold to somebody else. And it's kind of like buying a boat. There's 2 days in the boat owner's life that they are the happiest: the day they buy it and the day they sell it. So it must be live oak. Yeah, it must be that. I think that might be what it is, but I thought it was something else. But I'll circle back around. So go and check out this website. Did I actually post it? I am failing as mayor of ohmTown to put links in the chat. This next article is SNL parodies Nicole Kidman's iconic AMC ad with hilarious twist. I watched this, and then I found this article actually showing up in my aggregator, so I had to click it, and let's throw that in chat. You may or may not be, and so do I, Tull. We both talk in long phrases. Yes, I'm quite wordy. I went to breakfast this morning, and I ended up having a conversation with the staff, just standing there. They were having a conversation with me, and I would try and like lull the conversation down a little, so they're like, oh, okay, I'll go back to work. But no, they just kept on talking with me, and there were people behind us and next to us that are like, come on, you buttholes, we want our food. And they were happy, totally content to just have a conversation about their day with me. So I had to try and divert the conversation. Yep. Yeah, I do too. I really like going out. I wish COVID never happened, but hey, you can't test your global pandemic virus from a from a shop in China, right? Without actually letting it go wild. This is probably going to be the worst podcast for those who aren't hanging out in the chat. My goodness. So yeah. I'm 45 minutes over already. I'm not worried about it. I'll let it go for 2 hours. Why not? People around me might be mad. We all have plans, but anyway, let's do this. SNL parodies Nicole Kidman's iconic AMC ad with hilarious twist. If you haven't watched this, then you should probably check it out. It's hilarious. If you've never seen the ad, go and look for the ad too. But Brett Lang over at Variety did a little article and has the link to the video. I'm not going to play it because I always get dinged, it seems, and I don't want to have to do the paperwork to challenge it as being fair use. But it's a quick little spot about AMC, and let's just say it's quite, yeah, it says here, that's probably a good thing because it turns out SNL's version of Kidman's ad ends with her flying above the stadium seating. Yeah, you'll have to go on to get the full context of that. Just follow the link and you'll go over to the to the source. Boycotting it. You can't stand the principle of their humor. Ooh. We'll have to talk about that. And this is the last article. This says here, Republicans are the new isolationists. Will U.S. retreat from the world stage? Obviously, this is an opinion piece from The Hill, and it goes on like this. So Bill Schneider is a opinion contributor. I don't normally try and revisit things like this, but we were talking earlier about this isolationist anti-globalism kind of concept. This is not new. The Republican Party has always been anti-globalist, except that the businesses that are owned by Republicans are exploiting globalist ideals in that manufacturing and other stuff is being produced overseas and utilized. So really, where is the problem here? It is a cognitive dissonance in that a lot of this idea is, well, they need to stay away, and we need to focus on ourselves, and we need to use our military to influence these other countries. This is all kind of hand in hand with Republican ideals, which are kind of the antithesis, really, of where we are and how we got here. The plurality of people in the United States have come from other countries. It's only been perceived as a problem by those who think that it's a threat. But in reality, there are so many people that immigrate into the United States, or immigrate, depending on where you're going, again, which side of the fence you're on. But they're immigrating into the United States from their other countries, and they are providing a valuable service. A lot of these people do back-breaking work day in, day out, and get zero thanks for it, and less than minimum wage. And if they come in illegally, they are still working in mass or en masse in various places, from manufacturing to working on farms and mass production of stuff. It's quite an issue. But it seems like the new isolationist is coming back. But it's been around since Reagan. So most Republicans welcome a global exchange of ideas and economies, but feel we need to get our nose out of global conflicts because we are not a global police force and should bring our troops home. That might be a sub-segment of Republicans, yeah. The ones that are steering the country are very happy with utilizing the military as a show of force to embody the American ideal of freedom into other countries. Now, I have no problem with that if it's by invitation, but sometimes, like Iraq, Kuwait, Afghanistan, it's not going to happen. I mean, there is no way that this is going to pivot, because you have a polar opposite of ideology, and you're not going to win this by force. And as I said in other episodes, the only way to change the ideological direction of a country would be to completely obliterate the population of that country. Otherwise, you have an undercurrent of the old ideology still in place. You would have to give opportunity to the point where the people see this new opportunity as the solution, and not allow the old ideology to foment and grow. That's sort of kind of a problem that we're having here in the United States right now. I also hate the immigration argument that the people who are the loudest about how unfair immigration is refuse to put up new legislation to update our immigration laws and the path to citizenship on both sides. Yeah, I'm not so sure about the both sides part, because I don't think I know enough. But I'm happy to pursue looking into that. Now, by definition, the largest economic industry in the U.S. is defense and security. One of the leading portions of that sector is other countries paying us to keep our forces on their bases. Yeah. And we spend that money. And hell, we're spending a ton of money right now on keeping Ukraine afloat. They've done I was going to say a bang up job, but I'll say it anyway. They've done a bang up job defending themselves with what they have, and now we are loading them with more and more. And frankly, I think democracy needs an expanded foothold in the region to stop the fascism that might take hold. And Ukraine definitely had its own issue with fascism right before this president came in. So Um, no, we never really move on, do we? We can always come back. We give them discounts with no repercussions. Businesses, yeah, and the other countries, and yeah, there's a lot more to it than what we're having a discussion about, though, because a lot of businesses are enriching themselves under the footprint of weapon systems and the military that gets put in place. A lot of private business, private contracting. Okay. So I think my time is up today. We have reached the end of our articles. We've had a great conversation. I really appreciate it. And don't forget, I'm going to be here tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern. We will go over the last 24 hours of news as I see about 10 to 12 articles. I can't get everything because we would basically be here for an 8-hour stint at least, filtering through news, which will probably start happening next year. We're right around the corner. I'm going to give myself a Christmas present of running the show a longer period of time. And now I have the hiccups, so I thank you for coming and hanging out in my chat. I really do. And I hope to see you again tomorrow, where we will talk again about basically a massive range of topics. So Toll says and this will be the last statement I make, but it's actually Toll saying, I'm also getting tired of being right. I told people in my office, not my office, but Toll's office, that when they were active duty, that within 2 years of Biden taking office, we'd be at war with Russia, China, or both. And now I hear the rumor that we're being pulled into a UN policing action against Russia. Yeah. Because of Ukraine's situation. So it had to happen at some point if Russia was going to invade a country. And I doubt that we would have taken action in Ukraine to hobble the annexation of Ukraine. Yeah. Right on, Toll. I hope that don't worry. Obviously, don't worry about the podcast. Don't worry about the stream. You crush it in your interview. Yeah. And that's actually, Lunchbox. That's kind of how I feel, right? I feel like the abuser is gaslighting me and saying, punching me with my own fist and saying, "Why are you making me punch you?" It just happens again and again and again, and it's absolutely true. We are rational people are being gaslit, and irrational people are steering the bus, and who knows where we're going to end up. But it's got to be some sort of crazy town. So I guess just grab some popcorn. I don't think we have the political influence, but we'll talk about it at least to make change. We can talk, and that'll be our coping skill. Yeah, and that's exactly what we keep hearing. The invader complaining that the invaded is fighting them. Yeah. Yep. Like holding election. Oh gosh, we could probably stay and talk forever. We'll circle back around tomorrow, and y'all are awesome. Thank you so much for coming. I'll see you. Bye-bye.